So I promised you guys that I would do a video or a series of videos taking on Runaway Convention. Now, I've done some in the past, but today we're going to go after Mark Rowe. He's the latest of the doo-doo-doos that put up an article in the American Thinker, which I say that like it's a big deal. The American Thinker is not a big deal, but it's another website out there that will show up on Google if you go ahead and search for stuff as any diligent person would. So today we dismantle Mark Rowe and his argument for Runaway Convention. Yeah, of course this is rant worthy. Let's get started.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
I don't want you to ride. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the streets. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad.
Has the whole world gone crazy? Am I the only one around here who gives a shit about the rules?
You have the luxury of not knowing what I know.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"
All right, so we're getting into this Mark Rowe article. He's a freelance writer. He writes for a bunch of different. I don't know if you want to say publications, but they're different websites and things of that nature. Some of them may be publications. It didn't bother me to go. I didn't bother to go look up every publication he does because for the most part, in looking at a lot of his articles, he seems like a fairly reasonable-minded person with respect to what's going on. And with the exception of this topic, I don't necessarily disagree with anything else he says. But here he comes in. It's clear that he has been led astray. So we are here to bring Mark Rowe back to the rest of America, who's like I always say, there's Marxists and there's Americans. Now he's not a Marxist, that's for sure, but he's definitely a misguided American, and we're here to help him and help you in case you come across articles like this in the future. All right, so let's take a look at this article. So here's the American Thinker. The article is not very long, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to hit it straight up. I'm not going to just parse it out and start taking clips. We're just going to read the whole thing because it's not very long, and we're going to dissect it piece by piece. So he starts off by saying, many folks calling for a convention of states to solve our country's current political problems are making a fatal assumption about the purpose of cause. They see this as a powerful mechanism for undoing political corruption at the federal level. Unfortunately, a cause, meaning convention of states, a cause is not the tool to handle this particular problem. And under current conditions, now this is key because you're going to hear this a lot, under current conditions could easily lead to a very different U.S. Constitution that actually supports rather than prohibits common government activities. Now, this is nonsense. And he doesn't, of course, use anything to back this up except his opinion, right? But in the end, we already attacked this, and we did back it up. Now, we did a video on runaway conventions where we used Madison's notes, and it's in the title if you want to go look for it. Just scroll through our videos, either on YouTube. It's probably easier to find them on YouTube because they're all listed out individually, where you'll see it says using Federalist Papers 40. That's Madison. All right, and Madison explains in Federalist Paper 40, what the purpose, why they did what they did, why it was not a runaway convention in the first place, that they were actually commissioned to create a firm national government, and that the other portion of the commission that asked them to try and preserve the Articles of Confederation was impossible to keep, because if you know anything about the Articles of Confederation, the entire point of it was to make sure there was no firm national government. So they chose to go with the ends that they wanted rather than to preserve the means and not get any of the ends. Like, what did it matter, basically, is what he was saying, what you call this document. If you want a firm national government, you need to rewrite this. It was written to not have that. I won't get into that. You can read that yourself. But that's one point here. Now, the point that he says under current conditions. So people want to make the argument to you that because of the divisive nature of everything that's going on today, somehow that's going to impact the process of cause. Now, The main problem, just so you know, that people have with Article 5, for those who have a problem with it, is that it assumes power to the states, which is correct. So it doesn't specifically outline things like how a convention is called, what the process for the convention is, how a state should choose delegates, etc. Because it's important for people to understand that unlike today, where we seem to think presidents and Congress have the power in this country, and hence they do because we cede it to them, believing that they do, and refuse to assert our own. As long as that happens, they will have the power, but in reality, they do not. And the Constitution does not explain to them how to do a convention and how to. Well, we know the process from historical precedent, but it doesn't explain to them how you need to select delegates, how you need to do all these. And the reason it doesn't is because the states are sovereign, and the Constitution would be out of line trying to tell the states how they select delegates. And the only thing that needs to happen is delegates need to be there. The delegates need to be selected. The idea that current conditions were going to mess this up, obviously the conditions are going to be bad if we're calling for a convention. In Article 5, convention of states only exists for one reason, all right? And no, for the challenged, it doesn't specifically say what that reason is. It's assumed because why else would you use it? There's two ways that you can call an amendment. One of them is through Congress, the way we always have. They propose and the states ratify. The alternative, which was added some 2 days before the convention ended, when Mason came through and basically made the case and said, are we really so naive as to believe that the federal government's going to propose amendments should it become tyrannical? And James Madison notes in Madison's notes, September 15th, 1787, he notes in there that when Mason said this, that he verily believed that the government would eventually get too powerful. And he brought it to them and said, this doesn't work. Having Congress being the only one that can propose amendments, it ignores the possibility of them getting out of control. Now, to be a fly on the wall, I guarantee you they all laughed at that and passed it because, as Madison also puts in his notes, again, September 15, 1787, you can look this up. That's available online. All right, Madison says in the notes that it was passed without debate. It's the only thing in the entire convention that was passed without debate. This was an aha moment, an oops moment. This was like, oh yeah, how did we not think of that? And George Mason, now the way history has played out, and he was 100% right, and he's not the only one. All the Anti-Federalists felt this way. And obviously so did the Federalists, because, again, it was unanimous. So, again, now he says could easily lead to a different U.S. Constitution that actually supports rather than prohibits common government activities. No, it cannot. Like I said, this is the only reason that it's there. Otherwise, if we all agree on an issue, then Congress can do it. They can propose it as they always have. And the states will still have to ratify it. There will still be 3/4 of the states needed to ratify it, as there is with a convention. The only difference here is that instead of Congress having instead of Congress writing the language of the amendment and having 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate vote to approve it to propose, it's now the states. It's 2/3 of the states who are writing the language of the amendments and deciding what that will be before proposing it. The convention has no authority to ratify. It has no authority to do anything other than write and propose. Now, the idea that this could turn the government into a totally different thing, two things. Number one, they're basing that on the assumption that the first convention was a runaway convention, which we explained it was not. The second part of it is that not only was it not a runaway convention, it was not being done under a constitution. Article 5 exists now. The Constitution exists now. There's no commission here to create a constitution. There's no commission here saying create, affirm, or create a weak federal government. There are resolutions here or resolutions that are giving commissions on the same 3 topics. Now, if you hear people tell you, well, those topics are, that doesn't mean that the delegates have to follow. Yes, it does mean that the delegates have to follow that. The delegates are officers of the state. They work for the state. They don't become deities once they're selected as a delegate. It doesn't work that way. And the reality of the matter is, even if they went and decided that they were going to make up a new constitution and come back with it, you think 38 states? You think you can't find 13 states to block a freaking brand new constitution? I mean, the amount of insanity that's required to believe that these things are possible are insane. It's just insurmountable. It's just crazy. It's crazy talk. All right. But let's get into his next. So he says, first, what we want changed is typically not clearly defined. Again, wrong. Go to our website. You will see by state, I have every resolution listed. Every single one of the resolutions has well-defined topics that the conversation and the amendments must abide by. So as much as I would like to see them overturn the 17th Amendment, probably not going to happen in this convention because it doesn't fall under term limits, government overreach, or fiscal restraints. But I'll be more than happy to have another convention to do that. The second point to make on this is that if we were in a situation where the topics don't need to be clearly defined, then we'd already be calling a convention because there are more than 34 calls for a convention of states out there already around the states. The problem is they're not all on the same topic. So you can look up New York City's on Citizens United, which was a noble cause. But the fact is, nobody else has a resolution on Citizens United. That's starting at the number 1. That movement needs 33 more states to get on board. All right? We have 19 because there are 19 states on board. Read every one of them, folks. I got them all listed for you. Don't listen to doo-doo-doos like this. Read the resolutions. Listen to the state legislatures. This is where you find out that this is nonsense. So after lying and saying it's typically not clearly defined when it absolutely is, there are cause supporters are cause supporters hoping for term limits, congressional and judicial, the abolition of federal agencies, says changing the Interstate Commerce Clause? All of those things are things that are possible. All of those things fall under the 3 topics. But here's the dubious nature of how he writes this. And if somebody doesn't know, it flows, and you just think that it's a part of it. And the last one he says is, or altering the Second Amendment? Where did that come from? Where did that come from? That's a narrative, folks. It's a narrative, okay? That's where that came from. There's nothing, again, go and read them. Read every resolution, all right? This guy acts like for someone who's going to be acting as a journalist, you really should at least read some of the material that you're blabbering about. He has read none of it. We have read all of it. I have read every single resolution, because I had to go hand find every single resolution to put them in the website under each state. All right? This guy read 0. But someone's going to read this article, and they're going to think now that, the Second Amendment is in jeopardy. Even if the Second Amendment were in the topics, which it is not. As a matter of fact, many of the states, or at least some of the states, have actually specifically written that nothing in the Bill of Rights, period, can be discussed. All right? So that's in some of the resolutions, okay? So West Virginia, I believe, has that in their resolution as one example, as you're looking through. But the states get to define this stuff, all right? Not Mark Rowe, who clearly, thank God, Mark Rowe does not get to define it, right? But here we go. So he slips in the Second Amendment with other ones that are within the topics to make it seem like it's just all over the place. We don't know. Well, we do know. So after the Second Amendment, let me find my spot here. Here we go. So let's assume that these are just some of the examples that they would cite. Right? I won't go into them here. But each of these and many other issues were thoroughly considered and documented by the founders, who had very clear explanations for why they chose to write the Constitution the way they did. And yes, they did have very clear explanations, and those explanations were the Federalist Papers. They wrote the Constitution the way they did because Article 5 needed to be adjusted, and they agreed to that with zero debate. Zero debate. And if you're wondering what this link right here is to when he says very clear explanations, it's the Federalist Papers. And again, please, I encourage you to go read the Federalist Papers, because while he diligently went and looked them up, he clearly didn't read them. Clearly. And this gets better. This one is particularly fun because of the ignorance of it. But again, if you don't know anything about convention of states and you read this, like this, when you Google it, this is likely one of the first things that you'll find. All right. Now everybody sees something different when they go to Google. So which is the psychosis of Google as a search engine. It's the worst in the world. But in the end, they will take these runaway articles and push them to the top many times, despite the fact that Coz's website should be the most and is the most clicked on the subject matter. All right, but here, so second, the several states have not surrendered these powers to the federal government. This is a very important point. Rather by force of interpretation and then general lack of constitutional knowledge in our country, the federal government has usurped these powers a little at a time, clearly in violation of the constitutional limits placed on that government. Let me repeat, he says, clearly in violation of the constitutional limits placed on that government. Now, the government didn't take these powers. They were worked out in court. It's the Supreme Court who slowly but surely, and sometimes in leaps, depending on where you're going with it, it's the Supreme Court that generally granted them these powers. These things have been challenged, and the courts have wrongly allowed it. And this is the problem with lifetime officials, is that, like, if you get an all political court, which, the court's been accused of being political all the time, but frankly, the Republican Party will generally nominate constructionist judges, which generally bites them in the ass on occasion, because these guys are people who strictly stay to the letter of the law, and occasionally they will drift. But like the left, they just put straight activists on there. Like, they don't give a rat's bottom about it. They could care less about whether something is constitutional. They care whether they personally believe whether it's right or wrong or not. And then they move forward. Name me one conservative or conservative-minded ruling that Ruth Bader Ginsburg ever made in her life. In her life. Anything. Work with me here. You will not find one, because they don't waver. I can name you quite a few that conservative judges have broken rank with, and in horrible fashion too. I mean, horrible fashion. Like John Roberts is just, Kennedy at least had some rationalization to him. John Roberts is just a hot mess. Like, he's clearly just making decisions to hope that the court doesn't look political. That's why he makes the decisions. It's crazy. But that's how they got the power. It's not like, this idea that the government just usurped the power. No, they asked for it, and then they were given it, right? And then you've got situations like the states giving them authority over education. They have no authority. They still don't have any authority over education. But the states took the money, right? They took our money, and they bribed the states with it, and legislators who thought they were doing a good thing, because they're like, well, we're going to be adding an extra, $20 million, $30 million to our education budget. Like the whole time this was going on, it seemed to them legitimate. It seemed to good people like it was the right thing to do. And now we turn around and find out they've been training Marxists in our schools for freaking 30 or 40 years. And you can hear it in the state legislators' voices as they vote for convention of states. You can hear the shame that they feel, that all of us should feel, for allowing this to happen. It's not just them accepting the money. Where were we? Where were we? How did we let them keep this from us as parents? We did, because we just trusted them. We trusted them. 2020 came along, we all got a peek into the classroom, and we said, holy crap. And what happened in 2021? What happened in 2021 was the number of recalled school board officials tripled. Tripled. You can look this up on Ballotpedia. All right, he says, of course, there were those who raised the red flag at the time, and likely every time this happened. The threat was understood in great depth and detail. The character of the danger is, if possible, all right, so he's going and quoting Frederick Hayek here. The character of the danger is, if possible, even less understood here, meaning the United States, than it was in Germany. The supreme tragedy is still not seen that in Germany it was largely the people of goodwill who, by their socialist policies, prepared the way for the forces which stand for everything they detest. So no one disagrees with that statement. And frankly, that statement is not even a part of this article. Like, that statement is not even overly relevant to this article, right? He's trying to say, well, the government's been taking it all and we've all been standing by. Okay, thank you, Captain Obvious. Like, we are where we are today. Clearly, we've let this happen, right? But that has no bearing on whether or not a convention of states is a good idea. Now, he says, nonetheless, by force of persuasion, ignorance, criminal intent, or apathy, the oft left-leaning and self-serving bureaucrats, business leaders, and politicians carried the day. What exactly do proponents think will result from a cause? A runaway convention is completely possible. There you go, Mark. There you go, Mr. Rowe. Just get it off your chest. All right? There is no possibility for a runaway convention. All right, there's no possibility of that. None. So, and if you're ever reading one of these doo-doo-doos, and I don't get to it first, and if you hear them say the term con, all right, if you hear them say they're trying to say like a conventional con, right, like they're trying to make a play on words, it's not a constitutional convention. So if you hear con, immediately just stop reading that article. The person's an idiot. Just stop immediately. This is an article to propose amendments under a constitution. I don't know why that's so. I know why it's so hard for them to understand, because they're dubious. They're dubious. Their intentions are not pure. All right. In the case of Mark Rowe here, I think his intentions are actually pure. I think he's just dead wrong. And it's dangerous what he's doing, because he's literally advising the American people on false pretense to not exercise their constitutional power the one time that it is really, really needed. Like, according to people like him, the founders were brilliant, but they all got stupid when they were writing Article 5. And unanimously stupid. Like, everybody agreed to be stupid at the same time, because they didn't know as much as Mark Rowe knows, or Publius Hulda. Like, the founders couldn't figure that all out. It's just baffling to me how these people go on. Now, you can hear it in my voice how angry I get about this stuff. I'm probably going to be like this for every single article that we do, because it just pisses me off that this stuff is out there. I found this stuff too. Most people do, and I believed it for a hot minute too, until I went ahead and looked into it further. After I was done with the embarrassment of not even knowing, as of a year and a half ago, that this was even possible. But it's just crazy. So, all right, so a runaway convention is completely possible. There is no rule stated in Article 5 of the Constitution limiting the scope of a cause. There does not need to be a rule. And frankly, there is no rule, because there is no rule. The states can commission, if the states wanted to, they can commission their delegates. They can put that in their resolutions instead of term limits, and it's up to them what they want to put in there. What's limiting the scope of a cause? They can rewrite the Constitution if they want to. If that's what's in the commission, if they pass resolutions saying, we think that, the Bill of Rights needs to be totally thrown out, and 34 states pass resolutions as well, and they write an amendment that says this amendment strikes down for numbers 1 through 10, and then they can go get that passed by 38. I mean, it's insane. Then they got to get that passed by 38 states. Yeah, you're right. You're right there, Mr. Rowe. There's no limit on the scope of a cause. There's no limit. Because there's no limit on the power of the people. It's just that they're taking this to a place that absolutely cannot happen. Not under the resolutions that are being written right now. There is a limit to the scope of this cause. And he's right to say it's not in Article 5. It's in every resolution that's been written by every single state. But you see how they play with the words here? You see how, like, if you don't understand this, if you don't understand what I'm saying to you, you're going to read this article and you're going to even if you're diligent, right? You'll go look up Article 5 again and you'll reread it and you'll see that there's nothing in there that says what they can change and what they can't change. And according to him, that's scary. That's not scary. That's called power to the people. And clearly the people have been responsible. You don't see in any, again, look them all. They're all, you don't have to go searching for every resolution. They're all, I did that for you. They're all on our website. All right. The patriotthinktank.com/cause will take you straight there. You'll see the list of states and the groups. You click on those and it'll list off the states. The ones that have passed already and the ones that are still working and the doo-doo-doos that didn't even put anything together. All right. And you'll see in every single one of them, all three are there. All right. And this is why they just pretend like that doesn't exist. It does exist. But they pretend that it doesn't. And they hold up arguments that make no sense because of it. All right. So I digress. These guys, they upset me a little bit. It says, in fact, there is evidence indicating the founders fully expected any convention of states to operate exactly as the original constitutional convention. These people, again, when you read that, you're like, oh, so when they wanted it to function just like the original constitutional convention, well, that means they want to write a new constitution. No, it's the procedures. It's the procedures that they're talking about when they say it's how a convention should operate, not the topics of the convention. That's always going to work by the commission. When I say commission, it's what the state gives to the delegates to do. That's the commission, okay? Or the commissioners is really what, but I say delegates because people wrap their head around that better. But in the end, it's what they give the commissioner, it's what they commission to the delegates to do. In this case, for this cause, for the one that we have 19 signed on for that one, it's term limits for all government officials, fiscal restraints, and government overreach. Again, I'd love them to overturn the 17th Amendment and really which they stripped power from the states in an immense way when they pulled that one off. That's probably the worst amendment we've ever put in next to prohibition. I'm just kidding. It was worse than prohibition because people were drinking anyway. In the end, income tax, so the 16th and 17th, like they had a good run of leftism right there and just altered the United States forever. And it's time to alter it back. Okay? Now, we're not saying, in the end, we have an opportunity here to get us back to keep the American ideal intact and the American experiment going with all of the stuff that we've learned to date, right? So now we get to keep the ideal going with the civil rights movement fight already being won, with women's suffrage already being won, with these things have happened, we get to keep all that and get back to the individual success, to individuals being self-sustaining. You reap what you sow. Charity takes care of others. The goodness of others takes care of others. Government is not in control. That is how the game is supposed to be played. And if your rights are being violated, that's where government comes in. And only then does government come in. Right? The right for me to swing my fist ends at your nose. If I violate that, well, yes, then the government has a right to step in. That's what we have government for. That's why we're not anarchists. So they clearly placed all the power in the people, and those people who are empowered to participate in a cause have no limitations other than he acts like that's a bad thing. Do you hear how he's saying this? They clearly placed all the power in the people, and those people who are empowered to participate in a cause have no limitations, right? Other than the later ratification of proposed amendments by 3/4 of the several states. So two things. Number one, of course they have limitations. That's the whole point. We just went through all that. I'm not going to go through it again. The man absolutely writes this entire article as if the resolutions don't exist. As if they don't exist. He has not read one of them. Not one. but yet feels competent to write an entire article on why this is bad. Hasn't read one. If he read any, because he could have picked any one of the ones that are already written, and he would have seen that they all clearly have the same targets. But he read none. He's going to get into what he thinks we should do, and this is going to be a gem. In other words, anything is possible except probably a limited issue convention of the states. Right? So again, no acknowledgement that that the resolutions exist. The state legislatures don't exist. Once they select their delegates, the delegates become demigods and can take over the world. Like this is what they want you to believe, right? But if there's nobody like me reading this to you and telling you this, you don't know anything, you don't have any back reference of what this is all about, this seems believable. All right, it's on a website called The American Thinker. You know, they got all the drapes and everything in there. You know, maybe you look into his history, see all these conservative articles, and you're like, oh yeah, maybe you hear the John Birch Society talking about it, and it sounds believable. And truth be told, they got me with this initially too. And most people who support cause now have been through this, had to get past this. Okay, and like. It's depending on how you first approached cause will depend on whether you get stuck on that or not. If somebody you really trust and somebody you know that, you know, you've always looked to for advice and whatever, if someone like that is showing you stuff like this, you may not get past that. You may just stop here. And that would be a tragedy. And that's why I'm here. All right. So also keep in mind the founders had to sell the outcome of the convention to the public at large to get the Constitution ratified. The same is required for a modern cause. He says that like it's a bad thing. So his argument is that the founders had a runaway convention and that they created this Constitution out of nothing and they weren't commissioned to do that. And how dare they do it? And then he makes the point that it has to be ratified. And frankly, when they first put it out, it was not ratified because the states said, no, there's no Bill of Rights here. We're not buying this. And so it went back to friggin' be rewritten to add the Bill of Rights. The fact of the matter is the Bill of Rights being added to the Constitution was technically the first Article 5 convention. The only thing that pushes it out, because really and symbolically what it was the states saying, no, you can't do this. You can't, we reject your Constitution. Right? And they rejected it, and then they gave the reasons and said, look, if you want it to pass, you're going to put a Bill of Rights in. So they did. Right? And when this constitutional convention gets called, and it will get called, despite these doo-doo-doos, it's going to get called. And once it gets called, and once it's successful, and once we have changed things for the better, the way that the people want them changed, not the way the media wants them changed, or these other coconuts that are rolling around yapping their mouths, the majority, right? The way the people, as will be determined state by state, right? By legislature and by vote. As the people wish, these changes will be made. And when they are made, the next time the government gets out of line, I assure you, it almost certainly, with the exception of getting the support we need for the 17th Amendment to be repealed. That's one that may require another convention. But beyond that, anything else that we get pissed off about, we don't need to go yell on Facebook about. We don't need to go, try and scream and get the message out. We just got to calmly go ahead and set up another convention. And the mere threat of doing so will get now they're on a leash. The tides have now turned. Okay, the tides have now turned. So, especially since all the dinosaurs will be gone. Right? All the dinosaurs will be gone. Thanks to the term limits. So, all right. So today our mission is evenly split politically. Our nation is evenly split politically speaking. No absolute So absolutely anything could result. Since both political sides participate in the cause, the progressives could actually carry the day. No, well, what amendments would a progressive make in the scope of term limits, in the scope of government overreach, and in the scope of fiscal restraints? What are they going to carry the day with? Think about that. Just again, he's positioning this in a way where if you don't know any better, but stop and think about it, right? Again, unspoken here, or even ignored and even lied about in this article, there are conditions, that there are topics that need to be kept to. All right, and there are Democrats, by the way, who are in favor of them, not the psycho-Marxists. Okay, but voters, Democrat voters, 55% approve of the amendments. This is gaslighting, folks, and it's not intentional, I don't think, by this guy. I don't think it's intentional by most of these people. Although some of them, I would not be surprised if, like Publius Hulda, like I would not be surprised if, the Soros bunch, the Schwab bunch got hold of her. I would not be surprised. We'll get into her history in a little while, but in a different episode. I'm sorry, not in a little while on this one. All right. But he says, since both political sides participated, so could carry the day with the support of the far left, the mainstream media, and big tech money. So he's saying all the big money is going to come in and jump a cause. The big money has no say. They're not in the room. They're not in the room. They're not in the room. And the reality of the matter is, the people that are in the room. All right. First of all, big tech, big money, all that. They don't even know who the hell that is. They don't even know who's going to be selected. They have no idea. The type of people that get selected, all right, they're not lifelong politicians that are easily greased. These are people who are going to be selected by legislatures who are going to be responsible for them and are not going to take, they're going to be taking, constitutional scholar maybe will be one of them. They may have, an economic expert, certainly not somebody who's a proponent of modern monetary theory, although California probably will, right? California will probably send a monetary theory expert of modern monetary theory. They'll probably send, someone who's schooled in Marxism. Like that's who they'll send. Right? Doesn't matter. They all get one vote. They can send as many delegates as they want. They get one vote. All right. And in the end, there's nothing those guys are proposing that are getting ratified by 38. It's not going to happen. Because there's nothing for a Marxist to propose under the scope of those topics. Nothing. What their people are going to do is try and thwart the whole thing and try and turn it into chaos. The media hasn't even begun to attack this yet. These articles are like a drop in the bucket. When we get to 24, 25, 26, that's when that's when you're going to start hearing the attacks. That's when the full weight of the machine is going to be put to bear against the Convention of States. And you will know at that time, number one, that I told you it was going to happen, and number two, what they're doing. Right? One side uses fear tactics, not two. There's Marxists and there's Americans. Only one side uses fear tactics. We know what that side is. Don't fall for that crap. An Article 5 Convention of States is not the tool to fix the ignorance and corruption that ail this country and attempt any sort of quick change or opportunity. A quick change. Another one. Any attempt at any sort of quick change is the opportunity for things to go very wrong. Again, demonstrating his absolute lack of knowledge about anything that has to do with this subject. This has been going on for 9 years. What's a long change? A century? Like where this man does not know of what he speaks. Forgive him, Lord. He knows not what he speaks. Unbelievable, though. But if you don't know, again, it's like, this is why we're doing this, right? The only other quick answer is a risky and very costly civil war that would most likely leave us worse off than we ever imagined. Instead, we must take the harder and slower road to get our country and our fellow citizens back on the constitutional foundation. Now, here's where it gets fun. He's about to list off almost everything that would happen as a result of this convention of states. We must address the lack of Judeo-Christian morals in education, a lack the founders knew was the only way their new country would fall from within. Okay, well, guess what? You can, they're not going to make every school Christian school, but prayer should have never been removed from schools in the first place. That this church and state thing is nonsense. It was designed to not build a theocracy, not designed to not teach religion and remove all religious symbolism in violation of the First Amendment. All right, but getting rid of the government agencies, eliminating the Department of Education, this takes the government tentacles, the federal government tentacles out of that. Those become state decisions. And you can bet that prayer in schools will be back when that happens. And all these psycho-Marxists who have spent decades on end trying to separate people from their religion and from their families will be up at arms like crazy, but it won't matter. It'll be over for them. It'll be over. Right? His next one is we must ensure that we teach our citizens what the Constitution actually says, why it says it, and how it works. Again, addressed by the government overreach in eliminating the Department of Education. We must vote against and actively oppose political ideas that do not fit within the scope of our Constitution. I don't even know what that means. I don't even know what that means. We must vote against and actively oppose political ideas that do not fit within the scope of our Constitution. All right, thank you, Captain Obvious. You must have put a lot of thought into that one. All right, let's just move on. We must hold politicians, government functionaries, and their suitors accountable for misdeeds. Another one, like, wow, this guy really spent some time putting into this, right? Anyway, term limits addresses this. Moving on. We must take the golden eggs out of serving in Congress. No more millionaire clubs. Again, this brainless thought that was put into this, like, yes, and we should stop corruption at every level. Okay. I can't with this guy. But like, so take the golden eggs out of serving in Congress. Well, that's handled. Balanced budget, done. Fiscal restraints, done. Done. Not to mention, we get past the single subject bill where they can't add pork to the back of bills anymore. Their favors are done. Their favors are done. And with any luck, we can overturn the 16th Amendment, and now they're really finished. You go to a flat tax or a consumption tax, they have absolutely no weaponry to bribe or pay back, I should say, anyone. Anyone. If they lose the ability to write those loopholes they always swear they're going to close, right? The ones they create. If they can't write those anymore, corporations are not going to pay them anymore. And when they lose the power to do all this crazy, bizarre regulation, which really is only designed to keep large entities in check so that they can keep getting their money, all right, well, you know what? They're done. They're done. This is all addressed. This is all addressed with cause. All of it. All right. We must remove power from the federal agencies that regularly overstep their authority for lack of oversight and statutory limitations. Oh my God. Oh my God. Are you following me here? Are you seeing what this is? Are you seeing what this is? Again, it's like he's reading what cause would accomplish and saying, we don't need cause, we need what cause would accomplish. You can't make this up. You can't make this up. If we do not, here's his last sentence, if we not do all this, it won't matter what a cause produces. That is what a cause produces. No one will abide by whatever they don't agree with, and they will simply find precedents and interpretations that ignore the spirit of the amendments to suit their needs. Not if they're well. How many people have done that to the Second Amendment? They have tried and tried to change to eliminate the Second Amendment or alter it or do whatever, and they lose every single time they try. The one piece of the Constitution that stands firm and is often not screwed with the exception possibly of the 10th Amendment, since this is a problem after all, but it's not even that it's screwed with, it's that the Supreme Court keeps authorizing it, But all the amendments have been fairly upheld by the courts because they're all simply written, as would these be, sweeping and simple, not leaving room for debate and discussion. These are principles that are agreed upon. They're done. The federal an amendment that says the federal government must balance a budget annually, must not spend more revenue than it takes in, does not leave room for, but what if, now they can add in room, they probably will, for, natural disasters, things of that nature, but there's only so many national disasters that are going to happen. And that money will be written in to be appropriated specifically to the disaster. Like, clearly the game will continue, right? But the reality of the matter is most of the people who play it now from term limits will be removed from office. Most of the people who sit there and have played this game and believe in it will be gone. They'll be gone. And that's just the reality of it. They'll be gone. So in the end, look, I think you got the point with this article. I think you understand what I'm getting at. I think you understand, why this is so ridiculous. And I hope you do. I hope you do. Because, this is the first one. There are others. You're going to tell people. This is why when you sign the petition for convention of states, they're going to tell you need to get educated on the topic. Now, look, you could tell them, hey, George broke it all down for me. I got it. But they're going to still need proof, right? In God we trust, right? Everyone else needs to be validated. So in the end, though, you watch these videos, you go through their courses. It's not like a 6-week, you're not going to college. It's a simple, number of videos, some quick questionnaire, thing like that. But then you're done. And then, then you can start looking at how you can help out. But there's a reason why they do that, because they don't want you going out there and sounding like this doo-doo. They don't want you to be like, what is it, Matt Rowe? They don't want you to be like this guy. This guy's not too smart. What's his name again? Yeah, Matt Rowe. Yeah. He's not the sharpest tool in the shed, in the sense that he's willing to go out and write articles about things he knows nothing about, only to get grabbed by a dude like me and get himself torn to pieces on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Rumble, and Twitch. Yeah, we're blowing you up everywhere, Matt. But we're more than happy to bring you in. We're more than happy to bring you in. We only want you to see the error of your ways, and then we want you to join. Right? And shoot, I'll have him on here. I'll have him on here, and we can go at it ourselves. I'll take anybody on when it comes to this. I'll take anybody on. Because I like this. I am so sure that this is the way. Because the reality of the matter is, without this, there's nothing. There's this, and then there's Civil War. Because Klaus ain't slowing down, folks. They've been planning this for 50 years. If you think that they're not going to continue and they're not going to move forward with it because you said, I resist, yeah, okay. Let me know how that works out for you. Let me know how that works out for you, because it ain't going to work out well. All right. So until next time, I know Jack's coming out with some cool stuff coming up, and I'm going to have the next one I do is going to be on Publius Hulda. You can look her up yourself, but we're going to break her down a little bit better, because I see her articles more than anybody else, and I want to make sure that I get it all in with her. So I'm going to take a little bit of time with that one. It may be a few days before that one gets out, but definitely look forward for it. Make sure you subscribe. I'm pointing down like it's going to pop up. It's not going to pop up, but because my producer, I'm just kidding. It's me. I'm the producer. But make sure you subscribe. Make sure you follow. Looks like the shackles have been released on at least some of these sites. So I don't know why. I don't know what the motivation is. I don't care. Just go ahead and share it everywhere. Share it everywhere. The one thing you can do, no matter what time you have to offer, if you had time enough to watch this, you had time enough to handle that. Right? You had time enough to shoot off a quick post or share something, that somebody can learn from, right? And I know these videos, they're not designed for the simpleton with the short attention span. That's what our teaser videos are for. But in the end, this is information that every American needs to know. And it's information that you should be sharing once you've mastered it. All right. On that note, we're out.
And like that,